Hi, my name is Kees, and this video is me commenting on Adyashanti's video. I think it's called When Reality Moves You, and I haven't watched it in a long time. This is from my library of videos that I've downloaded from YouTube because I liked it so much. And I've downloaded that quite a long time ago. So let's see why I like this video, but I know it's Adyashanti, so it will be nice.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
And I'll comment along. I don't know what this was about. This is still the beginning of the video.
Yeah. I mean, this is really, as probably a lot of people know in here, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because it's really, in many senses, one of the most interesting things about the journey. Is this transition. And for most people, it's not a sudden transition. For most people, it's any more than adolescence is a sudden transition. But it's one thing to have all the ideas about you're not really what you are, and then when all that falls away or falls apart, and you can't actually even go back to it if you wanted to, because it's like picking up something that's dead. You know, it's like a cat that died a year ago, and you keep picking it up by the tail and expecting it to walk.
So for me, that was discipline. So after my spiritual awakening, which was like a big drop of self, was not total drop of self, but just the first big piece that dropped off. I couldn't get myself to discipline my way through life as I've had been doing before that. So like I think 10 years ago, I was still, that's when I had that shift. I think maybe 9 years ago. But before that, I was living my life very disciplined, okay, I need to do yoga, I need to do meditation, I need to read, I need to work on myself in this way, that way, or the other way. So there was all these to-dos and things. And then when that fell away, that was quite a big shift.
You know, it's just, pardon the graphic image, but I like to get my
Oh, the dead cat, so fun.
points across. You realize you just can't do that. It just doesn't make any sense. But the interesting thing is, then there is no necessarily immediate, obvious instinct of what to do next. And so it's really common to go, wow, this is weird. What falls away with my personal self as it's falling away, what also falls away that you can't really even imagine until it starts to happen is the personal self had a certain will to it, an energy, a life force, right, that drove everything, that literally drove everything, and you don't even know that, and you can't even understand it until it's gone.
So for me, actually, it was clear because I saw clearly in my first big breakthrough experience that you can surrender to life, that it's actually already happening without you needing to do anything. I saw my thoughts come up, I saw my movements happening, and there was no sense of self in that in the moment. Of course, that came back later, but there was this very clear knowing that I can just let go and be carried by this fully. And that's what I started to do. I started to, as I would call, surrender, but who's there to surrender, right? And let everything happen by itself. And that's, a beautiful orientation. But I see a lot of people that start to struggle with this because they know that they're not motivated from the mind anymore. They can see that what motivated them in the past to do anything really isn't working, and what they're left with is either surrender or resistance. And that's resistance as in some blocks for example work or doing things, and oftentimes also some resistance to how they've been doing things in the past as well. And so they need to learn to basically be from this new place where we can just surrender and let or thoughts, feelings, and movements just arise naturally and trust the process. Which is a hard switch for the mind because it wants control, it wants to know where we're going, right?
And then the energy, the motivation, the driving force of your life is now disappears one day. And the next thing often doesn't immediately show up. That's a little confusing. That's weird. And it may not show up for 6 months or 6 years. That's kind of a weird phase, right? Because the mind's kind of looking around going, but I'm not motivated to do this or this or this. And it's not the same as like when you're experiencing a deep state of depression when you're not motivated to do things either. But that's just because your personal self is totally turning in on itself in a very negative and painful way. This is different than that. It's because it's not a turning in a negative, painful way. It's that there isn't one there. And so it is strange for a while until the deeper impulse starts to become obvious, starts to awaken, starts to become enlivened within you. And it's
beautiful. Because this navigating from flow or from being or what's my favorite thing to talk about is actually the going from doing to being, right? So instead of a lot of people are unconsciously doing, so not really thinking about what they're doing, just doing stuff from their mind actually. When you stop the identification with the mind and when you tone that back a little bit, you get more awareness. And a lot of people are in that phase. They're like consciously doing. They're thinking about what they're going to do. They're thinking about, should this be good for the environment? Should this be good for me, my girlfriend, and my situation, my spouse, my kids? What would be best? Things like that for my career or for what I'm doing or for me or as a yogi or whatever. and then at some point you realize I can't know. Right? Or it's seen that there is no self to orient. So we start to go from conscious doing to conscious being. You're conscious with everything, but you're letting what wants to arise naturally arise from this deeper place, from this place of God or unity or oneness or just this. And you're serving the whole.
the interesting thing is it doesn't operate by any of the old rules. See? When this that I'm talking about starts to move in you, and it is moving in you already, it is there in a subtle form, in a subtle way. It's not real obvious yet. It'll become more obvious, but it is there. But it's hard to spot because we think it's going to behave very much like the old motivating forces. Like when it moves, we'll know why it's moving and where it's moving and what's its goal and what's its purpose and what's the meaning of it moving. All of those are personal values. When the illusion of the personal falls away, reality doesn't move by those values. It doesn't understand those values. So when this other force moves, it doesn't move necessarily with any reason. You can ask it, is this, like people will often ask me, how do I know when that's the movement? And I'll go, well, you can't really tell someone how. They just kind of have to mature into it. But as an approximation, if it gives any reason for its movement, it's not the real thing. If it gives any guarantees, it's not the real thing. If it gives any explanations, it's probably not the real thing. Because when reality moves, it just moves.
This is an interesting point because I do agree, but there's something that Eckhart Tolle said which sticks with me, and that's like, how do people orient after awakening? And he said, maybe I can comment on that video later. But he said something like either a sort of inherent knowing and movement arises, or just the movement without the knowing. And what has happened here is that also quite some knowing arises with movement. Not always, a lot of the times it doesn't, but it can arise. And that there's this clarity or this seeing like, oh, it should be like this. And I'm naturally putting my step towards that. And of course I'm not doing, but let's say there's this natural pull to get things there or to an equilibrium. It's kind of how it works for me with the videos as well, by the way, and with the coaching. It's like, this is what I am. So it's moving towards that naturally. And I know that. And it's not per se something I want, but it's just a natural route.
It doesn't say why, and it doesn't say where it's going to end up with, and it doesn't argue its point, and it doesn't try to convince you to follow it. All those impulses are totally absent. It's just a pure thing. It's just a pure movement of life force. I don't know how else to put it. And it doesn't seem to have any reason for it whatsoever. Not that you can discern. And yet, with some experience, you realize that it's the only way to go, and that it's actually not other than you. It's not other than the essence of your being, and reality does not move on the ways that the mind thinks it does, or for the reasons that it thinks it does. Yeah? Me being here and talking to you is a good example of it. I have no idea why I come and do this. I really don't. I have no real motivation to come and do this. I don't think I have a message that you need to hear, or anybody needs to hear. I have no idea why I do this. You see, but it happens anyway. That's the amazing thing. It happens anyway. It doesn't need any of that. And any reason that could be derived is so obviously mentally created and so obviously fake and so obviously phony that I couldn't even entertain it for a split second. But it does this. That's one of the things it does, you know. It's doing everything else too, by the way. It's not just like a spiritual thing. It can come to satsang, or it can get up and go to the bathroom. They're of equal value to reality. You know, sometimes you got to do one, sometimes you got to do the other.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, because it's not like it has some higher purpose that we can see beforehand. Sometimes we get a glimpse of, oh, I did something which I wouldn't normally do, or because that just arised in me, but then it turns out even more beautiful than I can imagine. That's because this force is, or this intelligence is, it's very big.
But I'm just saying that to give you, and I'm not just speaking to you because I know there's other people that find themselves in that place too, but when that other energy, when that other movement moves, it doesn't move without reason. It doesn't move with reason. It doesn't tell you why. It doesn't justify itself. You don't really know. To a mind, that can be weird. But after a while, the mind relaxes. And it's much funner. It's really fun. Just wondering, what's it going to do today? Where is it going to go today? And what's it going to be like today? And you're totally done with all those questions of what does my life mean and where is it all going, and you know what I mean? It's such a relief. I mean, those are just questions we ask when we're totally dead to reality. You know, they're surrogates for reality. They're like step-ins, they're stand-ins, you know?
It's like fake, it's like fake crutches for what is trying to... There's this tendency in the awakening process to, when either intuition comes up to do something, to then hold on to that and not go with the flow. Or there's this tendency to, when you're going with the flow, creating an image of where you're going and then holding on to that instead of just going with the flow. So the mind wants to re-own this flowy experience, this natural experience, and with that create actually a fake experience or an illusion. So that's something to definitely watch.
Because I have no sense of what I am and no connection with reality, then I need things like hope and meaning and purpose. Right? They're surrogates for reality, really. They are. And if we're not awake, of course, we don't want to take those surrogates away, because if you take them away from somebody who's still very much identified with their self, then they get extraordinarily depressed, right? Maybe suicidally depressed. You take purpose and meaning and goals and all that stuff away from an ego, you've got an ego that's just in a very, very serious state, don't you? Right? A very unhappy ego.
So all I can say is that which is beyond the mind, right? It's this freedom, this life itself. If we've tasted that, then we can fully trust that. And we don't need to trust on our thoughts or feelings or intuition or anything else, actually. We just trust that natural movement will arise. We don't have to make a decision ever again, because decisions will just arise. If somebody asks you a question, you naturally just answer the question. Or say, let me think about it. It's so cool how it works.
But those same things, when they disappear, when the me disappears, initially it may be confusing, but later it seems to be an incredible relief. And just an amazement that life moves without all that. And it moves in much more mysterious, much more enlivening ways, actually. Yeah, much more enlivening. Yeah. Life is its own meaning, you know? Life is
So this is the thing that actually woke me up in the Osho video, which I've commented on before, is that he says, life is the purpose. Life has no goals, no purpose. Life is the purpose. That was my first awakening moment. That's when I went in deep into the experience. Like, wow. Because I had always been so purposely driven or goal driven that it took that away from me. I realized that life has always been bigger than what was going on in the mind.
its own meaning. When we're alive, we're not asking for meaning. I mean, every step that's it. The reason for your existence is wherever you are at that instant. That's it.
Dogen has this beautiful quote: "Don't ask me where I'm going in this limitless world, where every step I take is my home." That's this, right? Every step is life, and every step is home.
And then wherever you are at the next instant, that's it. That's the reason you exist, that moment. And in the next moment, whatever you're doing, whoever you're with, that's the reason you exist. And for no other reason. That's it, because that's all there is.
So, wow. That was a beautiful video. Thank you so much, Adyashanti, and thank you for watching. And if you want some help with finding your flow, with surrendering to the flow, with your spiritual practice, or integrating some of the insights and deep experience that you've had, or just looking for some guidance or coaching, you can always book a free call below, and I'll be here for you. And we can talk about your situation and how I might be able to help in the moment or in the long term. Let's see. Okay. Much love. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.